Okay, so today we are going to do a charcoal drawing, a charcoal reverse drawing. And we are going to do a white on white still life. So you're going to have to set this still life up at home. And I realize that you're not going to have these white geometric forms, so you're going to have to come up with some white geometric forms on your own. And there's a couple of options. You can do like cylinders, so a cylindrical shape. You could have like a roll of paper towels or a roll of toilet paper. You can have coffee cups. If you've got any kind of white boxes, that would be great. The other option that you have is that you can take existing objects and paint them. If you have like white spray paint at home, you could spray paint a regular ball or something. That would be fine. So, but basically we want all white objects because we want to be able to distinguish between the form, the values on the form, and we don't want to have the interruption of having painted images or patterns on the form. That would just be a distraction for what we're trying to do right here. The other thing I have, you'll notice, is a piece of white paper that all the objects are sitting on, and I think that's important too. So you could just take a couple sheets of your 18 by 24 paper, lay it down on a surface. The surface should be below your eye level, but it shouldn't be on the floor. So maybe like coffee table height would be good, which is what we have here, about maybe a little bit lower than a coffee table. So we've got all the objects set up. And in the same way that we did with the still life before, you need to have a variety of forms, and you have to have some things closer to you and some things further away. Okay, so that's all in the setup. Then, when you're lighting it, you want to have the light off to one side so that it's coming down and illuminating one side of the form, so you have light on one side and shadow on the other side. So that's kind of important as well. And you can see that happening in here the way that we've got this lit. Now we're going to be doing a drawing like what you see behind me. Those drawings are going to be a little bit different because they started in a different way. And the way that they started was we masked off the edges with artist tape. And you can do this as well if you want to. And we use some powdered charcoal, which you can get at the art supply store. I provided that for the class, but I can't go to all your houses and provide it for you. So I'll show you an alternative to that. And so you spread out the powdered charcoal all over the whole paper to create a tone on your paper. So a mid-tone, kind of like what you see in the top corner of the drawing on the left-hand side. Okay, so just the tools that we're going to be using today. I have them here in front of me. So we have a charcoal pencil. Okay, now the charcoal pencil you can see I've got in a pencil extender. So this you can see has been sharpened down to pretty far. And drawing with something like this would be difficult. So that's why the pencil extender comes in handy. The pencil extender you can get at the art supply store. Or if you've got a brand new pencil, you don't need to worry about it. You might notice that the pencil's sharpened in a very specific way. So I'm not using a pencil sharpener to sharpen this. I'm using the X-Acto knife. I'm starting further back on the pencil and trying to use the X-Acto knife parallel to the barrel of the pencil and rotating the pencil as I sharpen. And then once I've got enough of it exposed to get the point, I use this. This is a sandpaper block. Again, you can get at the art supply store, and you can sharpen on top of that. Okay. Also, the stuff that you have left over from this, you can actually use to tone your paper. But we're going to tone our paper with something else. We're going to use vine charcoal. And the vine charcoal is different than the charcoal pencils. So the charcoal pencil is like compressed charcoal. When compressed charcoal comes in both the pencil form and the stick form, like what you see here. And then this is vine charcoal. Now vine charcoal is more like it's very lightweight. It's kind of like having a burned twig in your hand. That's what it feels like. And you can see the differences in the values. So when we put down the charcoal pencil versus the vine charcoal and then the compressed charcoal, you can see that the compressed charcoal stick is really dark. The charcoal pencil might look to be the same value as this, but you'll notice that this doesn't come off as easy as this. So the vine charcoal is what we're going to use to put the tone down on our paper because we want to be able to remove it. So you can take even something this skinny and you can put the tone down on your paper like that. The other thing I have, this is a very fat vine charcoal, and you can get them that way too. You don't really need to have that, but it does get the tone on the paper quicker, okay? What you don't want to use is the charcoal stick. You can use the charcoal stick later to put down a tone, but that is not going to be removable in the same way that this is, and we want to be able to take it off, okay? Now, in your drawing, I'm going to want you to have at least 4 forms, and it wouldn't be a bad idea. In fact, if I put it that way, you won't do it. So I'll say it's probably best for you to do some thumbnails first. I require my class, when I'm in there with them, to do 4 thumbnails, 4 different versions, 3 by 4, proportionate to their 18 by 24 paper, and have at least 4 objects in there, not have a lot of negative space. So those are the kinds of things we're looking for in our composition. So you want to do the same. The thumbnail you could just do with graphite. You don't want to do the thumbnail with the charcoal pencil, okay? So we're going to start drawing with the vine charcoal, and we are going to, I'm just going to pick one of the objects in here to give you an example as to how this is going to work. So when we start, we are going to just get that form on there. We're going to draw the little ball. And we don't have to worry too much about whether or not we have an actual circle just yet, okay? Because you're going to see we're going to be moving this stuff around on the paper. The other thing we're going to be using is this. This is a paper towel, okay? So the paper towel is just going to smooth out, spread out the value. So we're going to move this around in here. Now we can also use the vine charcoal to do a little bit of shading. So we have our light source over on this side. So our light source is here coming down this way, okay? Which means that you have a light side here on the ball, and we have a shadow side over here on the ball on this side. So you can blend that again too. The vine charcoal is really only going to be the beginning part of the drawing. After that, you're going to switch over to the charcoal pencil. Now this drawing is called a charcoal reverse drawing, and the reason it's called that is because you're going to be drawing with your eraser for your lights. So we've got the light coming down here, and about here we have a very bright light. Okay, now last time when we were doing value, I told you didn't have to remember any of the terms I was using. Now you do. Now you're going to need to remember these because these things are going to be on the test at the end of the semester. So we have light, the light source coming down here, and it's going to hit on the ball right here. And this is going to be our brightest light right there. That bright light, that's called a highlight. And so I'm going to use my paper towel again, and I'm just going to soften the edge of that. And so hopefully you can see that there's a lighter light here within the light of the ball. Now we might want to make the ball a little bit darker so that that stands out a little bit more. So I'm going to just add a little bit more of the vine charcoal around there and then spread it around. So hopefully now you can see the contrast between the light and the highlight. Okay, now I'm going to start using my charcoal pencil, and I'm looking at this area right in here where it seems like the actual shadow, the form shadow, seems to be a little bit darker. And that's because it is. This is called a core shadow. So now I'm using my charcoal pencil, and this is why we sharpened it the way that we sharpened it. It allows me to use the side of the charcoal rather than the point, okay? If you sharpened it with a pencil sharpener, even if you used a good pencil sharpener, chances are you're just going to have a stubby little point, and then you're going to have, it's going to look too linear. So you don't want that. You want to have values, smooth values, a smooth transition. Now this is blendable as well. And I know that a lot of you are going to be really excited about the idea of blending because I haven't let you do it up until now, okay? And that's good. I'm glad that you're excited, but you're going to have to remember that if you blend too much, you're going to not see any progress at all in your drawing. You're going to get it to a certain point, and then that's that. It's not going to get any better. So you don't want that to happen. And just like the vine charcoal, the blending really, it isn't going to be happening so much at the end of the drawing. It's going to be happening more at the start of the drawing. Okay, so now we have our light source hitting our ball, creating a highlight, creating a light side, creating a form shadow, creating a core shadow, okay? And now we're going to look to see how our ball is shaping up. When we did the value drawing before with the graphite, what we did was we got the actual outside contours perfect before we started the actual value part of it. Now we are not going to do that. This is more painterly, I would say, how we're applying value now. So the object interrupts the light source and throws a shadow. And that shadow is called, do you know what that's called? I'll pause and wait for you to answer the question. That's called a cast shadow. That's what you answered, right? So we're going to smooth out that cast shadow a little bit. Now I'm looking at the surface plane around the object. And the surface plane around the object, except for where I've got a little bit of the pyramid coming down over here, coming up this way. And I have a little bit of a cast shadow from the cylinder coming down over this way. The surface plane itself is white. And so that means I'm going to have to come in with my eraser and start taking out what I put down. And there's another cast shadow behind. Right over here. That's from the hexagon. So as I'm looking at the ball, I have to decide which is brighter, the light side of the ball or the surface plane around the ball. And the surface plane around the ball here is lighter, but there it's darker, which can and does obviously happen. Because the surface plane behind me, or behind the ball, is further away from the light, and it is slightly darker. So I'm still now monkeying around with the edge of the ball to make it round. Then I'm going to shade in the direction of the form using the vine charcoal still. I haven't really done too much with the compressed charcoal. Soften this edge. So what we would normally do here, or what we might do, is use a blending stomp rather than a paper towel. But the blending stomp, what it is a big tube really of paper that's got a sharp edge. That you can use that if you want to, but it's not really that important. But the good thing about it is that it has a point. So if you've got detail that you want to do, you can actually use the point of the stump. But you can take the paper towel and you can make a point on that as well. So that if you wanted to have something where you wanted detail of an edge or something, you can do that with the point of this. Okay, so back to the cast shadow. And back to the charcoal pencil. Starting to, come. What should happen with this, which is sort of different than the other drawing, is that this will slowly come into focus as we work on it. It starts off kind of blurry, and then it gets sharper and sharper. Now you might notice in the shadow side, right in here, this is still form shadow, but the form shadow is lighter than up in here, lighter than the core shadow. The reason that happens is this is what's known as a reflected light, okay? Now, when you have a reflected light, a lot of times students notice it, and that's good, but when they put it in, they make it too light. So let me show you what it would look like too light. So if we used our eraser and come in and make it as light as the highlight or as light as the light side, it can't be as light as the light side of the ball. So if we make it that light, then we have to dirty it up. Now the thing about this drawing that you have to remember is that when we're using the regular white paper that we have, that we're not using charcoal paper. So when we're using the regular white paper, it can take only so much of that rubbing and blending. So a lot of times, and especially if you go too dark or if you drew with this instead of using the Vine charcoal, sometimes you can't get the lines out anymore, okay? And there's no real way around that other than not doing it, so don't do it. Now here I'm shading away from my object into my cast shadow. Using the side of the charcoal pencil. Smoothing it out with my paper towel. And then here, I want to get it a little bit darker right underneath. What I want to avoid doing is having outlines around anything, okay? So right now, that kind of looks like an outline, so we're going to eventually have to get rid of that, although there is a little shadow that looks kind of like a line at the top of that object. So I just lost my edge on the top, but that's okay, because I'm going to restate it. So as we go back and we're looking at the still life, we see that there's the white paper that I have this set on, and then I have the edge of the model stand, which is a little bit darker than the white paper, and that's because people have been stomping around on that model stand and making it dirty. So now I'm drawing the edge, and because I don't want it to look like a line, I'm going to shade away from that edge. So I'm smoothing out now what I have on here before I do that. I started to say when we're talking about values and trying to find out what values are darker, what are lighter. Sometimes it's hard for people to figure out. So the way you do that is by blurring your vision. And then it should become clear. Now I am shading away from that outside edge using my charcoal pencil. As I do that, you can see that we start to get the edge a little bit sharper, and we start to pop out that light side, the contrast a little bit more. This is the edge of the paper, so shading away from that. So the top of this pyramid, this is a good place to talk about where we have the edge of the model stand. So the model stand ends at about here. And then we have the space behind the model stand, and the space behind the model stand, which is just the blank floor. This would be a good place to use the compressed charcoal pencil if I could find it, or the compressed charcoal stick. So that's this. You can see that little sample I put down there before. And you can use both the point of this and the side. And this blends as well. So you can use the blending stomp or the paper towel on that. So you can get a lot of darks on there pretty quick, okay? Okay, so we still got to figure out this edge because we've got two different things going on here. So I think this has got to come down a little bit more on this side. This is the edge of my pyramid, which is getting some light on it as well. So the kneadable eraser is good because you can make a point for that as well. Oh, and it's called, I didn't talk about this. Why is it called a kneadable eraser? It's called a kneadable eraser because you can knead it. And you can knead it just like you knead bread, right? So when you're kneading it, what that does is it cleans the eraser for you. Now, like I said, there will be times when you won't be able to take anything more off, in which case you want to maybe bust out a white plastic eraser or a pink pearl eraser, something like that. Shading away from my form now so that it doesn't look quite like an outline. Still figuring out the edge of this ball. The thing about getting geometric forms correct, especially a ball, but even a cylinder, a cube, or whatever, the idea is you have to get, a ball is going to be the same, right? Through the center. So this distance should be the same as this distance. And it's now starting to get that. And I think I'm going to cut into that light I made. That'll be most of the time you're spending is trying to get your ball to look like a ball, trying to get your cylinder to look like a cylinder. out that tone. I am also getting a bit of a reflected light, like right up in here. And a pretty strong one down in here, closer to the surface, which makes sense. But again, like I said, you want to make sure that it's not as light as that. So we're going to recap the terminology. This is light logic we're talking about now. So these are the terms that you're going to have to remember. There's a big line there. Okay, so light source comes down, hits the lightest light, or hits the part of the object that's closer to the light source. That was called a highlight. And this is just the light. We have in here form shadow. And then here core shadow. And that is the cast shadow. And then these lights here, here, and then where was the other one? Over in here. Those are reflected lights. So that's how it's going to work. You're going to have to account for those, and you should, when you light your object, you want to make sure that you see those things. You see the light side, you see the highlight, you see the core shadow, you see the reflected light. The reflected light's caused by the light bouncing off of the surface of the white paper, right? And it's bouncing back into the object. And the reflected light not only happens here, but it also can happen in the cast shadow. You can see where I have the cast shadow, there's a part of the cast shadow that's a little bit lighter. The reflected light can happen there too. You can also have reflected shadows. Usually reflected shadows are going to happen right at the edge of the form, okay? Okay, that's it, charcoal drawing, charcoal reverse drawing. Easy, okay?